Well, welcome to Thought for the Day. After, as Terry was saying yesterday, a rather long and somewhat unplanned break that both he and I felt we had to take over the last couple of months, as a kind of inspiration for Thoughts for the Day rather dried up. It was a strange time. Maybe you've had a time like it yourself when I just felt that life was a bit hard. You felt a bit cut off, maybe cut off from God, maybe cut off from the world. And I was in that place. It was not that I wasn't aware of God, but there was just a heaviness, and it was just felt really not possible to record daily thoughts. And I do want to add to Terry's my own thanks to Derek for keeping the lamp burning just once a week with his own thoughts and keeping going, even though that we weren't doing the rest of the week. But in those times of being cut off, we need some words of hope, don't we? And just a week ago on Monday, God gave me a remarkable picture of hope. It came when I was reading the story of Noah. It's a fairly familiar story. I'm sure many of us will have read it before. And particularly reading chapter 8. Chapter 6 describes the background of the story, the building the ark. Then chapter 7 describes the flood itself. But chapter 8 begins with just the very end of chapter 7. It says that the waters flooded the earth for 150 days. But God remembered Noah. And that God remembering Noah is the turning point that ushers in an incredible picture of hope. It is God's sort of active, life-giving, saving, remembering. When God remembers you, a whole load of things happen, and this chapter just describes them. The first thing is that the floodgates are closed. The springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens have been closed. The first thing that happens when God remembers you, that what's overwhelming you is cut off. The floods recede. Then a wind comes. And maybe you've now experienced that the life-giving wind of the Holy Spirit comes. The time of testing, time of being afloat in the ark, not knowing where you're going to end up, not knowing how long you're going to be there. It comes to an end. It comes to an end for Noah when the ark comes to rest on a mountaintop. It finds its foundations, and when God remembers us, we find our foundations. We find our bearings again. We can start to see as the water flow drops a little bit more. They start to be able to see the different mountaintops. They know where they are, and again, that's the experience of being remembered by God. You find your bearings again, and then you start to live in harmony with the created world. In Noah's case, he sent forth a raven, and it flew back and forth. No longer is his ark cut off from the world, but his ark is starting to connect. Then he sent out a dove, and the dove starts to have a look round. There's no instant answers. The raven flies back and forth, and comes back until the water's dried up. The dove goes out, and it comes back. But then he sends the dove out again, and the dove gets a branch. Signs of fresh hope appear. It comes back with a branch in its mouth. But still patience is required. No, it doesn't say, oh great, okay, there's trees, all the birds can go. He waits another 7 days, and that's actually why I suggested to Terry that though both of us a week ago were feeling, we can get started again on Thought for the Day, I said, let's wait 7 days. It's like we've had those signs that the dove got of the leaf coming back in the mouth. Those are the signs of hope. But let's wait 7 days. Let's just keep being patient. But this is a different sort of patience. It's not a kind of patient endurance. It's a hopeful waiting. We've seen the twigs. There's going to be more soon. Let's just pause. Let's not rush into it so we must grab it at the first opportunity. But let's trust that God will have his way He's shown us, he's given us our bearings again, he's got our foundations, the floodgates are dried up. And then there's the release. He sets the dove free again 7 days later, and it doesn't come back. Then it's time to open up the ark, to stretch our arms, to say, yeah, we can do it again. And it ends with them being fruitful. Noah removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. And God said to Noah, come out of the ark, you and your wife, your sons and their wives. Bring out all the living creatures that are with you, the birds, the animals, all the creatures that move along the ground, so that they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number again. That's the experience of being remembered by God. The floodgates are closed, the floods recede. The life-giving wind of the Spirit comes. The time of testing comes to an end. You find your foundations, you find your bearings again. Then you start to live in harmony with the created world. No instant answers, but it's a pattern of improvement. The waters go down. Signs of hope, fresh hope appear. Still need for patience, but a hopeful waiting, not just long endurance. And then the release, stretching the arms, becoming fruitful again. In Noah's case, that remembering is capped by a right response. Worship. He builds an altar and God gives him a promise. That's an experience which is available to each of us because, of course, God always remembers us. The only question is whether we will register and let register in our minds that God has remembered us and experience this wonderful release of hope that there is as we realise that, and he sets us free once again to be fruitful. So I hope you experienced that. If you've been in a difficult time, reread Genesis chapter 8. The delight in what it means to be remembered by God. If you're in a better time, just thank God that he does remember you. And of course, whenever you see a rainbow, it's a reminder that God remembers his promise to all of us. Well, God bless, and I'll speak to you again later in the week. And I'll see you then.